2 minutes. That's all it took for the WNBA to be thrown back into chaos. One clip, one reaction, one explosive monologue. And suddenly, Megyn Kelly wasn't just criticizing Angel Reese, she was declaring open season. Her words hit like a match dropped on gasoline, accusing, condemning, and framing the entire controversy as something far darker than a misunderstanding. This wasn't analysis. This was a public execution carried out in real time. Because when Megyn Kelly went ballistic, she didn't just question the claim, she questioned Angel Reese's credibility, judgment, and future, and the timing couldn't have been worse. The league's investigation had just concluded. No evidence, no confirmation, no smoking gun. 10 days of outrage collapsed into one devastating announcement, and that's when the narrative flipped violently. Social media didn't pause, it surged. Clips of Megyn Kelly's rant flooded time. She's done. This is the end. You don't come back from this. Fans took sides instantly. Some felt vindicated, others felt sick watching a young black woman become the face of a scandal spiraling beyond her control. Angel Reese wasn't just trending, she was on trial. Inside the WNBA, panic set in. Executives went quiet. Players watched closely. Because this wasn't just about Angel anymore. This was about what happens when a league reacts before facts, and what it costs when the backlash comes from outside voices with nothing to lose. Megyn Kelly didn't whisper. She didn't hedge. She detonated the moment. And in doing so, she forced one terrifying question into the spotlight. Was this the end of Angel Reese's credibility, or the beginning of something even more dangerous for the WNBA itself? Say next when you're ready for the next part. Angel Reese didn't walk into the WNBA as just another rookie. She arrived, carrying years of attention, resentment, and expectations stacked on her shoulders like unpaid debt. From LSU to the pros, she was never allowed to simply exist as a developing player. Every emotion was magnified, every reaction was framed, every mistake was cataloged. And from the very beginning, her confidence made people uncomfortable in ways they rarely admitted out loud. She played loud, she celebrated loud, she spoke loud, and that alone was enough to make her a magnet, not just for fans, but for critics who confused swagger with arrogance and intensity with attitude. While other young stars were praised for passion, Angel Reese was warned about tone, about optics, about how she came across. Long before this controversy, the groundwork was already laid for how quickly the benefit of the doubt could be taken away from her. When she entered the league, the spotlight wasn't neutral. Caitlin Clark brought unprecedented attention, and the WNBA leaned into that momentum hard. Angel Reese became the contrast, the foil, the player audiences argued about instead of simply watching. Every matchup between Reese and Clark was framed as symbolic. Every physical play became evidence of something deeper. And the more the league grew, the thinner the margin became for Angel to make a mistake. Off the court, the pressure intensified. Social media never stopped. Jokes about me-bounce, slow motion, clips of missed layups, commentary disguised as analysis but driven by ridicule. Angel Reese didn't just have to improve, she had to do it under surveillance. And while she worked, while she added counters and tightened her game, the noise never quieted, it waited. That's the emotional context people ignore when they reduce this moment to one allegation, because by the time the season opener arrived, Angel Reese was already exhausted, not physically, emotionally. She had spent years being talked about instead of listened to, years being told she was too much, years being pushed into narratives she didn't create but couldn't escape. So when the fever in the sky tipped off, the tension wasn't just competitive, it was psychological. Every foul felt heavier, every reaction felt judged. And when contact happened, routine, physical, basketball contact, it didn't exist in a vacuum. It landed on top of everything Angel Reese had already been carrying. After the game, she initially did what the league encourages players to do. She downplayed it, she focused on basketball, she spoke calmly. But then the internet did what it always does. It filled in the gaps. Rumors surfaced. Clips were isolated, anonymous posts escalated the moment into something bigger, and suddenly, Angel Reese wasn't just a player in a rivalry, she was at the center of a narrative. She didn't fully control anymore. The WNBA's response added weight instead of clarity. By launching an investigation immediately, the league signaled severity before certainty. Support poured in, statements were issued, and Angel Reese, already under pressure, now carried something heavier than criticism. She carried implication. Even without proof, the moment had teeth. That's when emotion collided with instinct. Angel Reese posted, deleted, spoke, clarified, tried to explain. how heavy it felt to play while processing everything happening around her. And in doing so, she stepped deeper into a storm that had already decided to move faster than facts. This wasn't about malicious intent, it was about accumulated stress. About a young player navigating a league growing faster than its guardrails. About how quickly support can turn into scrutiny when narratives shift by the time the investigation continued. The emotional damage was already done, because in the court of public opinion, timing matters more than truth. And Angel Reese was about to learn how unforgiving that reality can be. Because once doubt enters the conversation, it doesn't wait for evidence to make itself at home. The conflict detonated the moment the WNBA chose speed over certainty. What should have stayed contained inside an arena exploded into a national spectacle because the league reacted before the facts had time to breathe. One investigation announcement, one strongly worded statement, and instantly, the narrative hardened. Racism was assumed, villains were assigned, lines were drawn. Angel Reese didn't ask for that escalation, but once it started, she was trapped inside it. At first, the incident itself barely registered as controversy. A physical play? A flagrant call. Two competitors jawing the way competitors always do. Caitlin Clark shrugged it off. Angel Reese initially did the same. Post-game quotes were calm, focused, basketball first. For a brief moment, it looked like the rivalry would stay where it belonged, on the court. Then everything shifted. Anonymous social media posts began circulating, claiming racist abuse from Indiana Fever fans. No names, no times, no direct complaints filed during the game. But in the digital age, volume can masquerade as validity. The league responded publicly, condemning racism and announcing a full investigation. That statement changed everything, because once the league spoke, the assumption became reality in the public's mind. The first shocking twist was how little verified information existed. When the firestorm began, there were no videos of slurs, no clear audio, no corroboration from coaches or teammates. Even Angel Reese's own bench didn't report hearing anything during the game. Yet the story raced ahead anyway. Powered by outrage and amplified by media voices, who treated the allegation as fact before the investigation had even begun. Then came the TikTok. Angel Reese posted a short clip of Caitlin Clark walking away after the foul, captioned with a phrase that instantly ignited backlash. To some, it looked playful. To others, it felt provocative at the worst possible moment. With the investigation underway, the post poured gasoline on an already raging fire. The internet seized it, clips went viral, context disappeared, and suddenly, Angel Reese wasn't just the subject of an allegation, she was being accused of inflaming it. That's when the pressure snapped. Angel Reese began speaking publicly about how heavy the moment felt, about trying to compete while carrying emotional weight, about the support she received from the league. Those comments were human, but they were also dangerous in a narrative moving faster than nuance. Critics seized on the lack of specifics. What exactly happened? They asked. Who said what? The questions weren't malicious at first, but as days passed without answers, curiosity curdled into suspicion. The investigation dragged on. 10 days of headlines. 10 days of assumptions. 10 days where the words racism and WNBA were welded together in the public imagination. And then the second part of the twist arrived. The league announced it had found no evidence to support the claim, no confirmation, no verified incidents. The crowd noises that sparked the loudest accusations were deemed ambiguous, likely standard arena distractions. The foundation of the story collapsed in a single statement. And when it did, the backlash didn't disappear. It reversed direction. That reversal was brutal. It reversed direction. That reversal was brutal. Suddenly, the conversation wasn't about whether racism existed in sports. It was about whether this specific moment had been misrepresented. And that's where Megyn Kelly entered like a wrecking ball. She didn't frame it as confusion or miscommunication. She framed it as a scandal, a failure, a career-defining misstep. Her language was sharp, unforgiving, and relentless. In her telling, this wasn't a misunderstanding, it was proof of a broken culture willing to cry foul without facts. Her reaction didn't just criticize the process, it targeted Angel Reese directly. And that's where the conflict crossed into dangerous territory because now Angel Reese wasn't just facing questions, she was facing judgment from someone with a massive platform and no stake in the league's long-term health. Megyn Kelly's words spread faster than the original allegation ever did. Clips were clipped. Headlines screamed. The phrase fake racism claims began circulating as if it were established truth, not a contested interpretation of events. Inside the WNBA, shock turned into panic. players watched silently. Executives recalculated, because this wasn't a controversy they could contain with statements anymore. The narrative had escaped the league's control and landed in the hands of outside commentators who thrived on absolutes. Angel Reese's credibility was now being debated by people who had never watched her play, never heard her speak, and didn't care about the emotional context she'd been carrying. The first shocking twist wasn't the lack of evidence, it was how quickly the benefit of the doubt evaporated, and as Megyn Kelly's voice grew louder, one terrifying realization settled over the league. The investigation might be over, but the consequences were just beginning. The escalation didn't come from the league this time, it came from the outside. And once it did, the WNBA lost control of the story completely. Megyn Kelly's reaction wasn't treated like commentary, it was treated like a verdict. Her words didn't invite debate, they shut it down. In her framing, the investigation's conclusion wasn't complicated or nuanced, it was final. And Angel Reese, in that framing, wasn't a player, caught in a messy moment, she was the symbol of everything critics believed had gone wrong. That's when the second major twist hit. The backlash stopped being about evidence and started being about intent. Suddenly, Angel Reese wasn't just being asked what happened, she was being asked why. Why did the league react so fast? Why did she speak publicly without specifics? Why did the TikTok exist at all? Why didn't she wait? Those questions piled up, and each one chipped away at public sympathy. The conversation hardened into something colder and far more dangerous: motive speculation. Megyn Kelly leaned into that shift aggressively. She framed the moment as proof that accusations now carry more power than proof. That social media outrage could force institutions to bend before facts were verified, and in doing so, she reframed Angel Reese from a player under pressure into a cautionary tale. Not alleged, not debated, declared. Her tone suggested finality, as if this one moment had permanently defined Angel's credibility. That framing spread like wildfire. Clips circulated with captions screaming "she's done." Commentators echoed the language. Fan debates turned vicious. And once that door opened, it didn't just stay focused on this incident. It rewrote Angel Reese's entire public image retroactively. Every past controversy was dragged back into the light. Every old clip was reinterpreted. Every expression of confidence was reframed as recklessness. Inside the league, the reaction was pure tension. Players were warned to stay neutral. PR teams went into lockdown mode. Coaches redirected questions. No one wanted to be the next name pulled into the storm, because if this could happen to Angel Reese, one of the most visible players in the league, it could happen to anyone. The message was clear: once a narrative flips, there's no appeal process. Then came the most unsettling development of all. The story started overshadowing the games entirely. Broadcasts opened with controversy. Instead of highlights, social feeds prioritized outrage over box scores. Angel Reese could have a strong night, and it barely mattered. Her performance no longer led the conversation, her credibility did. That's when the career stakes became real. Not because the league punished her, but because attention did. Endorsements thrive on stability. Brand relationships fear unpredictability. And nothing scares partners more than a name permanently tied to controversy. Megyn Kelly's framing accelerated that fear. By treating the situation as settled misconduct rather than a disputed moment shaped by institutional choices, she hardened public perception. Her audience didn't see nuance, they saw certainty. And certainty spreads faster than complexity. Angel Reese wasn't being debated anymore, she was being judged by people who had already made up their minds. The league's silence made it worse. After the investigation concluded, there was no comprehensive follow-up, no detailed explanation of how the process began, no acknowledgement of how anonymous posts escalated into a league-wide response. That vacuum became fuel. Critics filled it with their own conclusions, and Angel Reese was left standing alone in the gap between what was proven and what was believed. That's when the second twist fully revealed itself. This wasn't just about one allegation collapsing, it was about trust. Collapsing. Trust in how the league handles sensitive claims, trust in how media verifies stories before amplifying them, and trust in whether young players, especially outspoken ones, will be protected or exposed when chaos hits. Angel Reese became the lightning rod for all of it. Not because she controlled the moment, but because she couldn't. The emotional toll mounted fast. Every appearance felt loaded. Every silence felt suspicious. Every statement risked being misinterpreted. Angel Reese wasn't allowed the grace of complexity. She was expected to either confess to something never proven or disappear entirely. And that pressure was relentless. Megyn Kelly's words didn't just escalate the story. They locked it into a new phase. A phase where facts mattered less than framing, where reputations were shaped by who spoke loudest, not who waited longest, and where a single investigation result wasn't enough to stop the damage already in motion. Because once the narrative became "she's done," the real question wasn't whether that was fair. It was whether anyone was willing or able to stop it. The fallout hit like a shockwave, and it didn't discriminate. Fans, players, executives, everyone felt it at the same time. The moment Megyn Kelly's words went viral, the conversation hardened into something ugly and unforgiving. Social media stopped asking questions and started issuing verdicts. Clips were shared without context. Headlines were rewritten with venom. And Angel Reese's name became less about basketball and more about suspicion. Timelines turned hostile overnight. Some fans felt validated, celebrating the investigation's conclusion as proof that the league had overreacted. Others felt deeply uncomfortable watching a young black woman become the face of a scandal she didn't fully control. The middle ground vanished fast. If you defended Angel Reese, you were accused of excusing false claims. If you questioned the process, you were labeled dishonest. The discourse became binary and brutal. Inside the WNBA, the emotional temperature spiked. Players felt it immediately. Group chats went quiet. Media appearances became tense. Some athletes avoided the topic entirely, afraid of being misquoted or dragged into a narrative that was no longer about facts. Others privately expressed fear that speaking up could backfire. The message was clear. Once controversy attaches itself to your name, there's no safe way to navigate it. Angel Reese carried the heaviest weight. Every silence was interpreted as guilt. Every word risked being dissected. She wasn't just playing through pressure anymore. She was living inside it. The court was no longer an escape. Every game felt like an audition for public forgiveness. Even strong performances were framed through skepticism. The question wasn't how did she play? It was what does this mean? That shift was devastating. Because athletes can recover from bad games, recovering from damaged perception is harder. Endorsement conversations stalled. Commentators debated her future. The phrase career-defining moment was thrown around recklessly, as if a single controversy could erase years of work. Angel Reese wasn't suspended, she wasn't fined, but she was branded, and branding is often more powerful than punishment. The league's response added to the tension. After concluding the investigation, the WNBA offered little public explanation of how the situation escalated so quickly. No transparency about the role of anonymous posts. No clarity about why the initial statement sounded definitive. That silence created a vacuum, and critics filled it aggressively. The absence of detail allowed narratives to metastasize unchecked. Megyn Kelly's framing continued to echo. Her audience treated the situation as settled truth. The phrase "fake racism" claims spread across platforms, flattening complexity into certainty. And once that language took hold, it became almost impossible to counter. Angel Reese wasn't debating evidence anymore. She was fighting a label. Locker room dynamics shifted. Teammates noticed the strain. Coaches fielded questions they couldn't answer. Practices felt heavier. The joy that usually accompanies growth was replaced by vigilance. Angel Reese had to think not just about matchups and schemes, but about how every gesture might be interpreted. Confidence became risky. Emotion became evidence. Fans felt disillusioned too. Some questioned the league's priorities. Others questioned the media's responsibility. Many wondered how a season opener spiraled into this level of chaos. The WNBA's rapid growth suddenly felt fragile, exposed to forces that didn't care about nuance or player development. Trust in institutions, in coverage, in process took a hit. The emotional fallout wasn't just public, it was internal. Angel Reese was forced into an impossible position: apologize for something never proven, or stand firm and risk permanent misinterpretation. Either choice carried consequences. And that's what made this moment so corrosive. It wasn't about right or wrong anymore. It was about survival in an environment that rewards certainty and punishes complexity. As days passed, the noise didn't fully die down. It calcified. The narrative stuck, even as new games were played and new stories emerged. And beneath all of it, one question lingered, unanswered and unsettling. If this is how quickly a player can be judged once a story escapes control, what protection actually exists when the next controversy hits? Because this fallout didn't just affect Angel Reese, it rewired how everyone in the league thinks about risk. Just when it seemed like the damage had already been done, the story took its most dangerous turn, not through new evidence, not through another statement, but through perception locking in. That was the final twist no one wanted to acknowledge. Because once a narrative hardens, truth stops mattering as much as timing. And Angel Reese found herself trapped in the space between what was proven and what people decided to believe anyway. The league thought the investigation's conclusion would close the chapter. It didn't, it sealed it. In the public mind, no evidence found didn't read as resolution. It read as ammunition. The same speed that once elevated concern now accelerated condemnation. And voices like Megyn Kelly didn't hesitate to fill the gap the league left behind. Her framing didn't allow room for complexity or process failure. It landed as final judgment. Clean, absolute, viral. That's when the realization hit insiders the hardest. This wasn't about whether racism exists. This wasn't even about whether Angel Reese felt something in the moment. This was about how institutions react before verifying and who pays the price when they do. Quietly, people inside the WNBA began admitting something uncomfortable. The league had lost control the moment it spoke too soon. By validating outrage before facts, it created a vacuum where outside voices could dominate the ending. And once that happened, Angel Reese became less a person and more a symbol. A stand-in for a broader cultural fight she never signed up to lead. Even more unsettling, the league couldn't walk it back without looking defensive. If they clarified too much, they'd look like they were minimizing harm. If they stayed silent, they let the harshest interpretation win. Either way, Angel Reese was exposed. Then another detail surfaced, one that reframed everything. Behind the scenes, players were paying attention, not publicly, not loudly, but strategically. They saw how fast support turned into scrutiny, how quickly empathy evaporated, how dangerous it was to speak during moments where institutions prioritize optics over process. And the message was absorbed instantly. Silence is safer than honesty. That might be the most lasting damage of all. Angel Reese didn't get suspended. She didn't get fined. She didn't get removed. But she learned something far more consequential. She learned that once a narrative turns against you, there is no neutral ground. Growth doesn't erase it. Performance doesn't override it. Even facts struggle to catch up. And for a young player still finding her footing in a league growing faster than its safeguards, that lesson cuts deep. Megyn Kelly moved on to the next headline. The media cycle rotated. Fans argued and then scrolled. But Angel Reese stayed inside the aftermath. Every future moment now carries residue. Every mistake will be framed differently. Every emotional response will be scrutinized harder, not because of what was proven, but because of what was assumed. And that's the cliff the league now stands on. Because the real twist isn't whether this controversy was mishandled, it's what comes next. Will the WNBA slow down the next time outrage breaks before facts? Will players feel safe speaking up or safer staying silent? And will Angel Reese be allowed to redefine herself on her own terms? Or will this moment follow her longer than anyone wants to admit? The investigation may be over. The games may continue. But the trust, that's still unresolved. And in a league built on visibility, that might be the most dangerous loose end of all. If this story made you pause, that's because it wasn't just about Angel Reese, it was about how fast a narrative can turn into a verdict. And how little protection exists once that happens. This wasn't a game recap. This was a warning, a moment that showed how outrage can outrun evidence, how institutions can speak too soon, and how a young player can be left carrying consequences that never belonged to her alone. Now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you believe the WNBA moved too fast and lost control of the story? Did Megyn Kelly cross a line by declaring final judgment when the facts were anything but simple? Or is this a case where public trust was already fragile and one moment exposed just how broken the process really is? Drop your honest take in the comments. Not the safe one, not the popular one. Say what you actually think. Because conversations like this don't get resolved on TV panels. They get shaped right here, by fans who refuse to accept lazy narratives. If you want more deep, high-drama WNBA breakdowns that go beyond box scores and dig into power, pressure, and perception, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. These stories don't end when the buzzer sounds. They echo. And the next controversy is already loading.